Well, this is the second try. Let's hope that the powers that be are with us here. So for those of you who are joining me tonight for this evening's discussion, I am going to be talking about love and eternality and you and I and our permanence, our capacity to be permanent in eternity. And here's the book, A Course in Miracles. Get rid of that glare. We will be talking about all sorts of interesting things. So Charlie's with me here. Charlie, am I coming through loud and clear, or am I garbled? There's Margaret Terrell. Sounds like maybe I'm all right on this second try. Christina and Anne. Thank you, Anne. I appreciate that. So evidently, that first misfire was just a temporary glitch, a glitch in time. So all of you wonderful people, I am so pleased that you joined me for this evening. And as usual, as we're delving into the book, we are going to be starting off with one of the lessons from the book. And the lesson that I was looking at today that I thought was particularly useful and very profound, this is a lesson that is very lengthy as far as the dialogue goes, and it's lesson 190. And it's, I choose the joy of God instead of pain. And this really is putting us on the spot as far as our willingness to accommodate the ego, because the ego is going to hurt you. You will experience pain as long as you're trying to defend and uphold and support the ego. So it says, pain is a wrong perspective. When it is experienced in any form, it is a proof of self-deception. It is not a fact at all. There is no form it takes that will not disappear if seen aright. For pain proclaims God cruel. How could it be real in any form? It witnesses to God the Father's hatred of his Son, the sinfulness he sees in him, and his insane desire for revenge and death. And this turns up a whole bucket of worms as far as who you can approach and how you approach people with this line of thinking, because it is so easy to look around in this world and connect the dots and assume that prior to a person's entering this world, there was nothing. There was simply a void. All of us have come here from a previous life or a previous mindset somewhere in eternity that caused us to stumble, as it were, and fall into the realm where pain appears to be real. And A Course in Miracles is the process wherein we reverse that experience. And the way we do that is by reversing our thinking. So, it seems cruel when you see people who appear to be victims, children who are horribly attacked by this life, animals that are being slaughtered, and all of the other horrific imagery we get out of this dwelling that we are imagining on this plane of existence. But the truth is that all of this is a fantasy that is occurring within our mind. And our true self, that self apart from the physical body, is very comfortably ensconced in God. That self never left God. And like I said, this can become a topic of extreme and heated debate. So we have to be mindful as to who we share these thoughts with. When you just go out on the street and start babbling about things like this, there's a good chance you're going to get people very upset with you. So we have to be discerning. But at the same time, as we are making our own internal journey, and as we are making progress on our own understanding of truth, it is lifting everybody in the world up above us. And it's quite fascinating how that process works, because we tend to diminish ourselves and imagine that we don't really have that much of an impact. But the truth is, every time we take a step forward in our awareness and in the process of our awakening, everybody, whoever has been, whoever will be, receives benefit from that single tiny step that we make personally. So that's why it's so very important for us to work on accepting the atonement, not only for ourselves, but to have that realization that that perfect union with God helps to erase this memory that we're still clinging to of a life apart from God. So the lesson goes on to say, can such projections be attested to? Can they be anything but wholly false? Pain is but witness to the son's mistakes in what he thinks he is. It is a dream of fierce retaliation for a crime that could not be committed, for attack on what is wholly unassailable. It is a nightmare of abandonment by an eternal love which could not leave the Son whom it created out of love. So once again, it reinforces that idea of the intimacy that we experience as we come to awaken to our true identity. And we were created exactly like God, with all the attributes, with all of the various aspects of how we imagine our Father, our source, our mother, however you want to envision that concept of God. So within this journey that we are on, we are learning how to rewrite our sense of identity, and to rewrite our sense of the impact that we have on all life that surrounds us. Pain is a sign of illusion's reign in place of truth. And that, it doesn't necessarily mean just physical pain. Emotional pain is also under the same blanket. It's under the same umbrella. It says, it demonstrates God is denied. So God didn't kick you out. That story about Adam and Eve and being chased out of the garden, that's a very dark part of Christianity and Judaism and even Islam. All the Abrahamic traditions teach us that we were rejected by God. So that's why we have to be very sensitive to what we absorb and what we believe, and look at how we were raised. Look at our history on this planet, so that we can weed out these thoughts of separation and isolation. It says, if God is real, there is no pain. If pain is real, there is no God. For vengeance is not part of love. And if God is love, then God obviously is not going to, be vindictive and be condemning and be judgmental. God is just going to be love, period. Says, and fear, denying love and using pain to prove that God is dead, has shown that death is victor over life. The body is the Son of God, corruptible in death, as mortal as the Father he has slain. So all of our thoughts about, this vengeful, judgmental God places God, number one, in the physical body, and number two, creates the circumstances wherein God is flawed. and therein we have justified our own belief and our own flaws. So it's very insidious how this dream has unfolded and where it has taken us. And of course, the only way out of the dream is forgiveness. We have to let go of any judgment and any attachment to this mortal life. So as long as you're thinking you're a body, and as long as you're entrenched in physicality, you are definitely going to be suffering at some point. Things may be good right now, but next week you're out riding your bicycle and you take a fall and you got bloody knees, and then a dog comes along and bites you as you're trying to get back on your bicycle, and calamity is around every corner in this material world. So we have to lift ourselves up and dwell with our source, with our creator, in that realm of truth. So that's why the Course reiterates over and over that one really powerful affirmation: I am not a body, I am free, I am as God created me. So that is an affirmation that really re-empowers us, because it helps us to disconnect from the mesmerism of the physical realm. So it goes on to say, peace to such foolishness. The time has come to laugh at such insane ideas. There is no need to think of them as savage crimes or secret sins with weighty consequence. Who but a madman could conceive of them as cause of anything? Their witness, pain, is mad as they, and no more to be feared than the insane illusions which it shields and tries to demonstrate must still be true. So we're being offered an avenue out of all of our difficulties in life, really, because it is systemic. It goes from the top to the bottom and from the left to the right, and it's an internal journey that takes us to this incredibly high place of perception, where we're viewing a world that appears to be madness and turmoil and death and destruction, and we're able to transcend it, because in that moment when we disconnect from our physical body, when we stop the brain from thinking, when we step into that place of silence, we are suddenly shifted into a realm of peace and joy. And as you start to practice these ideas from the Course and start to step into that place of stillness, you come to a realm where the ecstatic is perceived or understood as being a very natural state of being. It's not just about being joyful or just about being at peace with the world, but there is an ecstasy that we experience from the reunion that we periodically are able to claim with our source. So it becomes a very beautiful journey, even in this dark, dark realm, because we know the truth of who we are, and we can walk through, as the 23rd Psalm says, walk through the shadow of the valley of death. And that's what this world was created to be. So, as we continue to move on here, it says, my holy brother, think of this a while. The world you see does nothing. It has no effects at all. It merely represents your thoughts. And it will change entirely as you elect to change your mind and choose the joy of God as what you really want. So, and I have witnessed that myself. There was a time in my life before I really became deeply invested in A Course in Miracles, when I was very sensitive to all of the darkness that seems to appear in the world around me. At this point, I can truthfully say that that doesn't come into my field of vision or experience nearly as much as it did 10 years or 20 years ago. So all the turmoil, all the strife, all the struggle, I have been able to step out of as a direct result of doing what the Course lays out for me on a day-to-day basis. And within the Course, what we're doing is we're learning how to tune into that facility within ourselves wherein God has created a communication device, and that is the Holy Spirit. If you allow the Holy Spirit to direct your day, you will undoubtedly start to experience a much different world than the one that you are imagining yourself to be entrenched in right now. And again, it removes any sense of being a victim, because it brings us back to the realization that within our mind, which is a generator of experience, the mind is like this huge assembly plant that puts together all the components of our reality. So once we learn how to tame the mind, focus the mind, and redirect the mind, and ultimately surrender the mind entirely to the Holy Spirit within us, the world that we live in definitely starts to soften. It starts to expand. All of our restrictions start to fall apart, and we are lifted up to a different way of life. It says, and it will change entirely as you elect to change your mind and choose the joy of God. So that was what I was just, highlighting. That right there is a very powerful statement. It says, and would you deny a little corner of your mind its own inheritance and keep it as a hospital for pain, a sickly place where living things must come at last to die? So the question is presented to us, do we want to have a part of our mind sequestered away from God and away from truth and away from enlightenment? Or do we learn how to tame the mind so that that sense of a separation, that sense of a break within the mind, the split mind, the conscious and the subconscious, is finally healed? Because once the mind is fully restored to its integrity, in 2 or 3 different places around the workbook here for the Course, we are offered the idea that our mind is a part of God's mind. And obviously, God's mind dwells in eternal peace. So we have chipped off a little part of that mind and claimed it as our own and identified it with a body and turned ourselves into lunatics. And we're in pain most of the time that we're in this realm. And again, you can never understand how much pain the world lays claim to simply by observation. We see a lot of hideousness around us, but the truth is a lot of people in a very personal way are suffering on a very deep level. They may appear on the surface to be, having a glorious existence, but the truth is, every once in a while, somebody that is being pursued by the paparazzi and is being perceived as having an enchanted existence will suddenly commit suicide. They'll just, boom, pull the plug. And that happens because that inner pain, that inner sense of separation has grown to the point where even the adoration of the masses can't compensate. So it's an ugly situation, no matter how you view it, but it is a situation that we can correct. We are not victims of this situation. We are perpetrators, and we have to stop perpetrating these crimes against ourselves, and that's literally what they are. My holy brother, think of this a while. The world you see does nothing. Pardon me, I just finished that. Okay, it says, It will change entirely as you elect to change your mind and choose the joy of God as what you really want. Yourself is radiant in this holy joy, unchanged, unchanging, and unchangeable, forever and forever. And would you deny a little corner of your mind its own inheritance and keep it as a hospital for pain? So, we really have some hard decisions that are being presented to us here. Pain is a thought of evil taking form and working havoc in your holy mind. Pain is a ransom you have gladly paid not to be free. In pain is God denied the Son he loves. In pain does fear appear to triumph over love, and time replace eternity and heaven. And that's what this world really is. It's a ticking time bomb. Everywhere you look, you're seeing the attrition of time. You're seeing things start off as a seedling growing to a magnificent tree, and then starting to decay and fall apart and ultimately be returned to the earth. And a lot of us have that dialogue around, oh, but it's the eternal cycle. It's so beautiful. It's so perfect. And the truth is, why would you choose to have something be born, to live, then become corrupted, and to die? Would that be your idea of a loving parent to whatever creation you're talking about? So we really have to be honest with ourselves about the demands that we place on life in this realm. And that really is what it's all about. We are the ones who are placing these demands on existence. And existence is a magnificent and eternal thing. And look at how we've tried to cripple it and diminish it. So that's a little bit of the lesson number 190. And now we're going to take a trip into this next section that we were looking at, chapter 6. This is a great chapter. It's the lessons of love. It says the message of the crucifixion. Well, that's an interesting dichotomy here. We're talking about love, and we're starting this off with having a little bit of dialogue about the crucifixion and what it really was. For learning purposes, let us consider the crucifixion again. I did not, and when he says I, this is Jesus who has dictated the course to Helen Schuckman, says, I did not dwell on it before because of the fearful connotations you may associate with it. The only emphasis laid upon it so far has been that it was not a form of punishment. Nothing, however, can be explained in negative terms only. There is a positive interpretation of the crucifixion that is wholly devoid of fear and therefore wholly benign in what it teaches, as it is properly understood. So what we've been taught about the crucifixion was that God was this lunatic sitting in a palatial environment in the sky somewhere, demanding that we sacrifice in order to maintain a peaceful relationship with God. And that whole idea of sacrifice is really dark and very ugly. You go back in history and look at Jerusalem and the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years ago, and sacrifice was going on 24 hours a day. The air reeked in the areas around the temple because they were constantly killing dogs and pigeons and calves and sheep and anything they could get their hands on. And in that process of slaughtering it, there was literally a river of blood that ran out of the temple. And then they were throwing the carcasses into different environments to cook them, to share with the poor, or else to incinerate them and spread the ashes elsewhere. And that vision of God is what supports the idea that the crucifixion was the ultimate sacrifice that had to be made to appease God. That's pretty pathetic, really, when you bring it down to the quintessential realities of what life is and what God is. You know, you can't define that God as a God of love. That certainly is not a mindset that in any way can be interpreted with the word love attached to it. So going on, it says the crucifixion is nothing more than an extreme example. Its value, like the value of any teaching device, lies solely in the kind of learning it facilitates. It can be and has been misunderstood. This is only because the fearful are apt to perceive fearfully. So if you have inherent fear, then you're going to look at the crucifixion and it's going to freak you out. And that's the burden that a lot of Christians live under, is that burden of fear and guilt associated with the crucifixion and the expectation that somehow they're going to screw up bad enough so that they get crucified. So I have already told you that you can always call on me to share my decision and thus make it stronger. I have also told you that the crucifixion was the last useless journey the sonship need take, and that it represents release from fear to anyone who understands it. While I emphasized only the resurrection before, the purpose of the crucifixion and how it actually led to the resurrection was not clarified then. Nevertheless, it has a definite contribution to make to your own life. And if you will consider it without fear, it will help you understand your own role as a teacher. So basically, what he is alluding to in this paragraph is the idea that we all are going to be crucified in one sense. And that part of us that is the personal ego is the part that is going to be crucified. But it's not going to be like dragging a cross up Golgotha and getting nailed to it. It is just as much a struggle in many ways, because we do love this sense of self that we have created. But in the journey, we have the solace and support of the Holy Spirit and of Jesus. So Jesus appearing to us as the face of the Christ is what we are allowing ourselves to be led by. And if you really think about it, you know, the alternative is to just cling to your ego and go down like a brick to cancer or car wrecks or, you know, having a bad experience outdoors on a two-wheeler or a four-wheeler or whatever. You know, the truth is that something is going to die either way. You're either going to cling to the body, it will die, you'll fall asleep and then come back and die again and again and again. Or else you will enter into this state where you allow the ego to be dissolved. And I won't kid you, sometimes it feels like you're dying because that ego is so pervasive and it is so convincing and it is so immediate. It's always in your face. But as it begins to go into this process of dissolving away, and that's literally all it is just a dissolution. And it was never real. So, you know, the part that you're holding on to is a vapor. It's like a breeze on a warm summer day, shaking the leaves on the tops of trees, but it has absolutely nothing to do with the roots and the anchorage of those trees. So this is a magnificent journey. It is a challenging journey, and there is a world of support for all of us as we enter into this journey to the truth and to the resurrection, which is resurrecting ourselves and separating ourselves from pain and sorrow and strife. So if you are inclined, definitely pick up a copy of A Course in Miracles. For those of you who are already into the Course and joining me on these journeys, I'll remind you all that my website on A Course in Miracles is at www.themiraclewithin.org, and you can go there at any time and get a lot of information, a lot of ideas, and some of my other videos are there. So pick it up and give it a spin, and you'll discover that the life that you've always wanted is a life that you've always had. You just were oblivious to it. That's the fun of this whole adventure. So next week we will come back and continue to illuminate the fine points of the crucifixion, and then segue from there into the depths of love, and to come to a different understanding of what love actually is. So that was a pretty rapid half hour there. I'm very much appreciative of all who joined me on our little journey through A Course in Miracles. You can find me on Facebook, obviously. So get out there, share the love, pass the love around, because that's the only thing that has any value. And I will see you in 1 week. Take care.